I've really tried to be honest and open with all of you about just struggles that I've had. And one of them specifically, massively being depression. I talked a lot about that in the episode Depleted with Bass Pro and Bucky. So if you haven't watched that, go back and watch it, or maybe watch it again. I talk about my favorite story, 1 Kings 19, probably my favorite story. That and Mark 4 are probably my two favorite stories. Mark 4, because the disciples are drowning and they ask God, do you even care? And I've felt that in my life before. I'm drowning and I don't even know if God gives a rip. 1 Kings 19, Elijah, he's just like, I'm done. I'm done. Like he literally says, God, I want to die. And what I love, and we'll talk about this more in a minute, God doesn't take that out of scripture. He leaves it in there because it's a reality of some things that people will face. And not everybody faces this, but if you are suffering from wrestling with self-harm today, man, I'm speaking directly to you, and I'm speaking about something I know so well. First time I can remember wanting to inflict self-harm on myself, probably high school, where I wanted to drive off the road. I just almost had this, fantasy is not the right word, but like if I could just drive off the road and I would die, like it would just make everything better for everyone. And then that kind of moved into my adult years. And I went through this time. It's like, oh, okay, well, I felt like that because I don't have this and I didn't have this and I didn't have that. And then I got all of those things. I was married. I had kids. Like if you look at those pictures of me in that time, like I'm smiling, but deep beneath, I know under the surface, something is off and something is wrong. And I would go through these cycles, man. I would have good seasons or maybe good weeks or maybe just a few good days. And then, man, I would have such low lows where it became this thing where it was like, if I could just put a gun in my mouth and end it and not hurt anybody in the process, man, like that's the way I'm going to just be done with all of this. And maybe here's the thing. Maybe you're feeling that same way, but maybe you don't have the language even to say what you're feeling. Like something inside of you, like I knew, is loud, it's heavy, it's restless, like your chest is crowded maybe, your mind won't shut up, oh my gosh, like you're carrying this weight that, man, no matter what, you can't set it down. And nobody really gives a crap anyhow that you're carrying it sometimes, which makes it worse. And so you don't talk about it anymore. And all you try to do is manage it. And for some of you, that management, it looks like hurting yourself. It looks like inflicting that pain that you can control instead of dealing with the pain that seems uncontrollable. For others, it looks like you're just wishing that you would stop waking up, or even more so to make sure that you don't wake up anymore. And maybe for you, it's both. But let me just clearly say something carefully and incredibly respectfully. Hurting yourself is not proof that you are less than or weak, I should say it like that. And having these thoughts do not mean that you are a failure and you are a failure at faith in Jesus. Most people who wrestle with self-harm or suicidal thoughts, they're not even chasing death. They're just trying to escape that overload or that pain or that deep hopelessness. And they're trying to get relief from something that feels unbearable, that is now deeply rooted within us. In the same way I talked about in the last episode about addictions, beginning with seeking relief, self-harm sees this as the ultimate relief as well, because there's answers. Or maybe I say it like this, there's not answers anymore to the darkness that is fading everything out. Now, professionals, they would call this emotional dysregulation, right? So that's a clean phrase for the messy reality that your nervous system has been under so much pressure for so long that it doesn't know how to settle anymore, right? So your body stays on high alert. Your thoughts easily spiral. Your emotions come in waves that feel so big you can't even ride them anymore. And drowning is the only truth that you know. And when that happens, pain starts looking like a release. Like physical pain can feel easier than emotional pain because it's specific. It has edges. It gives your brain something to concentrate and focus on. And for a moment, yeah, it can cut through the numbness or drown out the noise. And I'm not trying to make that a healthy, hey, okay. I'm just trying to say I get it. A lot of you learned early that your feelings, man, were either dangerous or your feelings were ignored or your feelings got punished. So you just learned to stay tough, man, stay quiet, stay in control. But you know this, emotions don't disappear when you lock them up. They actually just seem to continually get worse and worse and worse until they leak out everywhere and then it suffocates you inwardly. And eventually, man, something has to give. And for some of you, the real issue underneath the urge isn't sadness. It's shame. It's hopelessness. It's a deep, grinding belief that you are the problem, that if people really knew the real you, they'd be done with you. And maybe some people did get to know the real you through some of the worst moments, and they say, well, that's who they are, and they are done with you. And therefore, the world might actually be better without you. Or maybe it wouldn't even notice or care if you left. And that belief, man, hear me, that didn't come out of anywhere. Maybe it came from abuse that trained your body to expect harm. Maybe it came from abandonment that rewired your sense of worth. Maybe it came from mistakes that you can't undo and names you now carry, or a number that seems like that you are all that's you are known by. Maybe it came from years of being strong when you weren't allowed to be safe, for years where hope was always crushed in your life over and over and over and over again. And pain and shame and hopelessness, man, it just seems like it sits in the driver's seat of your life. And now your mind starts suffering and offering those dangerous solutions, not because it wants to kill you, but just because it wants to end the pain that is so strong. Now hear me, thoughts are not actions and feelings are not decisions, and pain is not a moral failure, okay? Another word professionals use is this: learned hopelessness. It happens when you've tried to change things over and over and over again and nothing seems to work. And after a while, your system starts even expecting relief. You don't want, or you don't stop wanting things to be different, but you honestly stop believing that they ever could be different. And that's when thoughts of like, man, what's the point of even being alive then? Or this will never change, so what's the point? Them things start sounding like facts and truth instead of symptoms. And hear me, I believe they are deeply to my core symptoms. What you're dealing with isn't just a spiritual issue. It could be. It's not just a willpower issue. It could be. It's not just a behavior issue, even though all of those could be. But I want you to see this. It's a human nervous system under prolonged stress that is tapping out. A human nervous system under prolonged stress that is saying, I can't take this anymore. It's that grief that never got named. It's anger that had nowhere to go. It's fear that stayed too long rooted in your soul. It's loneliness and abandonment that became a constant background noise to everything in your life. It's the pain that you had to navigate that hurt more than you could ever fathom or ever explain. And here's the part I don't want you to miss. None of this makes you defective or beyond help. Please hear that. It means something inside of you is trying to survive or tried to survive with limited or no tools. And you may have learned to disassociate or shut down or explode or self-destruct, or even how I have fantasize about escape because those were the only strategies available to you at that time. And they might have helped you get through something truly that would have crushed you, right? Like that's just the reality of it. I don't want to pretend that it might not have helped you. Like that coping strategy that once though kept you alive, even though it might have helped you in one season, can become a trap in another because there's no options left. And I'm not condemning those strategies. Please don't hear something I'm not saying. I'm just like saying like, I want you to understand that they don't control you now. Because I do believe there's a difference between validating pain and endorsing harm, okay? Like I'm more invalidating the pain. I get it. I can say I understand. And why this showed up without saying this is the answer. Like harm, what I'm trying to say is this: harm is never the answer to pain. And I'm not asking you to minimize this or clean it up or just going to tell you, hey, go think positive. And I love positive thinking, or man, come on, get it together, suck it up. And I'm all about getting it together and sucking it up. But you need truth though. You need language that's not going to flinch when you are saying these things. You need presence that doesn't disappear when the darkness goes from dark to darker in your heart and in your mind. And I just want to let you know in the very beginning of this, we will talk about practical tools. 100, we're about to. We'll talk about grounding your body. We'll talk about interrupting spirals. We'll talk about building safer ways to release pressure and learning how to sit with emotions without being drowned by them. We'll talk about faith for sure in Jesus. That doesn't shame you for struggling, in God who is not scared of your honesty. But I first want you to hear this. If you're feeling this way, you're not alone in it. You're not being judged here. No, absolutely not. And your life still matters. And sure, I'm not saying that you're not fighting for your friggin' life right now. What I'm saying is you got somebody coming alongside you and saying, guess what? Even in this season, you can champion it. Even in this moment, where that deep, hopeless pain is so loud that it aches every inch of who you are, you can still champion this season through Jesus. We screw around a lot. We laugh around a lot, or laugh around. That's not even a word, laugh around. Maybe it is. But today I'm going to give you 12 things, practical things that will help you if you are wrestling with self-harm. Before we jump into it, I do want to say this. Shout out to Hatcher. Him and I had a really serious, deep conversation the other day, and he said, maybe consider doing this. And I just considered doing wrestling with self-harm. And I was like, man, that goes hand in hand with wrestling with addiction and wrestling with nothing is wasted. So let's jump in. Actually, I'm going to get a little bit of this prime. I'm going to get a little prime. All right, the first one is name the thought instead of becoming it, right? So when that voice says, I can't do this anymore, don't argue immediately. Instead, maybe stop and name what that thought is, right? That this is a hopeless thought. This is a shame thought. This is my nervous system overwhelmed. Name the thought, don't become it. That's a small shift that creates space because you aren't that thought. You are the one noticing the thought. Now, if you don't name it and deal with it, man, absolutely. If you don't make that distinction that this is a thought I have, this isn't who I am, that's where, man, it will start to become your identity. And just know the Psalms are full of that kind of language where they're saying like, why, my soul, are you downcast? David speaks to his own inner world. He doesn't pretend, right? He's just not going to surrender his thoughts and make that become his identity, because thoughts are loud but they're not always true. And I've said it before, I'm going to say it again. If you don't name what you're feeling, you run the risk of becoming it. All right. The next one is this: shrink the time frame when hopelessness hits, right? Shrink the time frame when hopelessness hits, right? This will never change. I will always be this way. I will always feel like this. This like forever mindset that can kind of happen. So instead of fighting forever, shrink it. Ask this: what do I need to do to get through the next 10 minutes? All right. Not the next 10 years, not the rest of my sentence, the next 10 minutes. Shrink the time frame. Take it from forever and shrink the time frame. Here's the next one. I just wrote this down. Survival happens in small blocks, not huge leaps. Okay. Remember this: in the wilderness, God gave Israel manna. Right? Jesus gives us our daily bread. All right. So why do I say that? You don't need to solve everything. I put that in there because I want you to understand God will give you something right now that you can outlast this wave. Does that make sense? You can outlast the wave you are feeling with what God can give you right now. All right. So the next one is interrupt isolation. Okay. Interrupt isolation. Self-harm and suicidal thoughts grow in secrecy. That's what I mean. Not necessarily your block, or if you're in solitary, that kind of stuff. Like inside where you're at right now, you may feel vulnerable. Vulnerability is dangerous. And in some settings, you have to be wise, but isolation is gasoline on hopelessness, right? So if the thoughts are escalating, you need to tell someone. You need to tell a chaplain, a counselor, a medical staff member, right? A trusted officer, a mental health request form. Maybe fill something like that. Fill something like that out. Reaching out is not weakness. It is strategy, all right? Because there's a difference between being tough and being alone. And Jesus himself invited others into his distress in Garden of Gethsemane, right? He said, stay here and keep watch with me. He didn't not pretend like, oh, I'm all good. No, he brought people into it. And if your thoughts are moving from I wish I wouldn't wake up to I am planning something, that is the moment to get immediate help. Please hear me. I'm not talking about drama. That is not drama. That is wisdom, okay? Your life is worth interrupting the silence for. When it goes from the thoughts to the plans, you need to speak up, all right? Here's the next thing. Replace the release, all right? Replace the release. If self-harm has been your release valve, you need another one, okay? Not a perfect one, but a safer one for sure. Like, man, sometimes cold water on your face, wall push-ups until your arms shake, right? Writing out exactly what you are feeling without even just editing it, just saying it out loud, reciting scripture out loud if the area allows that, pacing while praying honestly instead of just trying to be polite and quiet. Like, you're not pretending the urge isn't there. That's what I'm trying to say. You're redirecting the energy, right? You're redirecting the energy. The Apostle Paul would talk about renewing your mind. That's not pretending thoughts like just disappear. It's building new pathways slowly over time, okay? So like, this is real work, but it is possible. I want you to get that. If you can begin to navigate how that release valve, if you will, can change, look for what fits where you are at, all right? But look at, and I'm going to talk about this in a second, like, get a plan together. Get a plan together. And that sounds silly unless you are wrestling with self-harm. Get a plan together, all right? I wrote this down. When it feels like there is only one way out, there is a specific kind of overwhelming that just hits you different, right? It's not sadness. It's not just sadness or just stress. It is the moment when your mind begins to narrow, options shrink. You know what I'm talking about? When everything inside of you says there is only one way to make this stop. Mental health professionals call this cognitive constriction. That is a technical phrase for tunnel vision under distress. When your nervous system is overloaded, your brain starts filtering out possibilities, and it locks onto one solution, and it treats it as if it is the only exit door in the whole building. When that narrowing starts to happen, so here's some things, I'm going to give you the rest of these, that you can do that are not dramatic, they're not preachy, they're not fake, they're not cliche, they are practical, and they might save your life. So the first one is this: delay the decision. Delay the decision, all right? I wrote this down. When your brain says, do it now, your first move is not to argue morality, all right? Your first move is to delay. Tell yourself, I'm not making any permanent decisions for the next 24 hours. Delay the decision. If 24 hours feels impossible, an hour. If an hour feels impossible to delay, 10 minutes, right? The suicidal crisis often peak and fall like waves, okay? Research consistently shows that intensity spikes and then it reduces if a person can ride it out without acting. Delay. You're not promising to feel better forever. You are committing to not act while the wave is at the highest, right? Delay, I don't know if that's a word. Delay is power is what I'm trying to tell you. One of the greatest things you can do in that moment is delay the decision, all right? Here's the next thing. Ground in the room you're actually in. This has helped me big time. And right, so when your mind begins to spiral, it lives in like imagined futures and replays pain and past all the time. Grounding pulls you back to present reality, right? So here's what you do in that moment. You look around and name these things, okay? 5 things you can see. 4 things you can feel physically, 3 things you can hear, 2 things you can smell, and 1 thing that you can taste, or a word that describes what the air is around you. Now listen, that's not therapy BS. That is a neurological reset work, and it engages part of your brain that's responsible for regulation instead of survival panic. When you get to these moments where you have no answers, listen, you start going into this survival panic. You got to re-regulate it in the moment, right? So right now, in this exact moment, here's what I wrote down. You are breathing. Right now, in this exact moment, the wave is a feeling, not an action. Stay in the room. Does that make sense? I hope that makes sense. That one has helped me so much, okay? So here's the next thing. Again, some of this, if it is possible, move the body on purpose, okay? Overwhelm creates trapped energy. And that's the only way I know how to kind of put it. Like if you cannot leave the tier, you can still move. Like wall sits, slow push-ups, pacing with intentional breathing, clenching and releasing fist slowly 10 times, right? You're not trying to punish yourself. No, you're giving your nervous system an outlet that does not harm you, right? It's a different release valve like we just talked about. Trauma and stress live in the body, and movement helps discharge what words cannot. Even Elijah, I talked about 1 Kings 19, before hearing God's whisper, he slept and he ate. God addressed the physical before the spiritual. And listen, that's not accidental. You might be like, well, I can't just sleep and eat or whatever it might be. Do these little things. Do something to get that energy out of you. Now, the next one is this: expose the lie of permanence. Hopelessness speaks in forever language. Please hear me on that. Hopelessness shouts in forever language. I can't stress that enough, that you will be like, well, it will always be this way. I will never change. No one cares. Like, listen, when those statements come, challenge the permanence in them. Okay. I know that's a little bit of a stretch, but ask yourself this: is this a feeling or is this a fact? Have there been even small moments where this was less intense? You don't have to pretend life is great. I'm not saying be fake, but you're simply refusing to let your worst moment write your entire future. Please, please hear me. I'm so passionate about this. Learned hopelessness convinces you that nothing works because some things did not. But the existence of pain does not prove the absence of possibility. Just because the pain is there, it's not proving the absence of what could be possible. So here's what I want you to do. Identify one reason to stay for today. Not 10 reasons. I don't need you to give me a friggin' motivational TED talk. Nope. One reason. Why is one reason I can stay? And it might be your child. It might be your mother. It might be proving a statistic wrong. It might be your own stubborn refusal to let this be the end of your story, man. It might be Jesus. It might simply be, I am not letting this son of a wind tonight that is yelling in my ear. Sorry for the harsh son of us. One anchor, I promise you, is enough to get you through a wave. You're not building a theology in this moment, right? You're buying time for hope to re-enter. Here's the next one. Bring the darkness into words. Shame grows in secrecy. Suicidal thoughts intensify in silence. If you cannot speak it out loud yet, write it. Unfiltered, unpolished, unspiritual. Here is what I am thinking. Here is what I am feeling. Here is what I'm afraid of. Research is incredibly clear on this stuff, right? That naming distress reduces its intensity. The brain processes emotions differently once it's verbalized or put down. So the Psalms, again, are filled with raw language. That's why I love the Psalms, that they're not edited, not cleaned up. God was not threatened by any of the psalmist's honesty, right? He actually put it in his word. You don't have to be polite with your pain, but you do need to get it out of your heart and your mind in either verbally or on paper. The last one is this. Create a personal crisis plan before the next wave. This is serious, man. This is obviously preventative, but this absolutely can save a life here. When you're not at peak intensity, write some stuff down. Here's what you're going to write down, all right? What triggers me most? What early warning signs feel? What do they feel like to me? 3 things I will try before I make my harmful decision. Who will I contact if these thoughts escalate? Like, this stuff it's not weakness, man. This is strategy. And inside those walls right there, listen, They might have something where you could submit a mental health request or notify a chaplain or alert staff if you feel unsafe. Like, if you are actively planning to harm yourself, immediate communication is critical. Please hear me. That is not betrayal of toughness. That is protection of your life. You're allowed to protect your own life. And I'd beg you, I'm doing all this because I want that for you. I want that. Separate the urge that you have from the identity. You may feel the urge, man, to do something self-harm intense, but the urge is not your identity. You are not a suicidal person. You are a person experiencing suicidal or self-harm thoughts. And that difference friggin' matters. And who you are is bigger, I want to say this clearly, than your worst moments of pain and hopelessness. And you're like, yeah, Trevor, I don't know if I believe that. Well, let me just ask you this. You think it's by coincidence you saw this? You think it's just by chance that you see this thing and you've watched this far? You're not watching just for the beaches or for the cars or the music or the shout outs. You're watching because something in you is looking for hope. I want to finish this up, but my mouth is about how dry is my mouth? How dry? If I took 4.5 teaspoons of sand and then just drank salt water, that's how dry my mouth is. All right, so let me get my second set of notes pulled up here, and we're going to wrap this up. All right, let's wrap this up because here's the thing. There eventually becomes this moment where you realize that you can't outthink this. You can't out-discipline these feelings. You can't out-distract yourself, right? And I believe this, that realization that, man, I can't handle this is not failure. It's actually a doorway to the grace of God. I've said it several times through this about Elijah in the Bible, how he found himself under a tree in 1 Kings 19, asking God to just let me die. And I love that God kept that in. This was a man who had seen miracles, who had stood strong in public, who had obeyed when it was costly, and yet there he was at the end of his wits and said, whispering that he had had enough. And here's the thing, God's response tells us everything about God's heart. And this is why I love that story so much. He didn't scold Elijah. He didn't shame him. He did not say, after all I've done for you, how could you think this way or feel this way? Instead, God moved towards him, led him to sleep and fed him and restored him physically before he ever addressed anything spiritually. That's the part that blows my mind. And when he finally spoke, it wasn't in chaos or in force. It was what the scripture says. It was in a whisper, meaning it was in a kind way. That is who God is with the overwhelmed and the hopeless and those that are in pain. Listen, Jesus is not harsh. He is not distant. He is not irritated. It says he is close to the brokenhearted. And if you are wrestling with thoughts of hurting yourself or ending your life, man, you need to hear this clearly. Jesus is not standing at a distance with his arms crossed, waiting for you to straighten up. He is the shepherd who walks into valleys. Psalm 23 does not say we avoid the valley of the shadow of death. It says he is in it with us. Thank God. And even Jesus, man, he understands distress. And the garden, like we talked about a few minutes ago, he said his soul was overwhelmed to the point of death. Like, that's not weak faith. That's just honest humanity. And he stepped into the darkest place a human being can experience, not to shame us for ours, but to sit with us in it and to be able to lead us through it. Like, hope in Christ is not pretending darkness isn't real. It's knowing the darkness does not get the final word. Like the cross of Jesus looked like the end. It looked permanent. It looked like defeat, but the resurrection was already moving beneath the surface. And what felt final was not final. Please hear that. What felt sealed was not sealed. And your current thoughts are not the final chapter of your life. They're just a storm passing through your mind is the best way I know how to put it. So when your mind tells you there's no way out, listen, Jesus says there is another way through. When shame tells you that you are beyond repair, Jesus says he actually specializes in rebuilding what other people thought was done and finished. When hopelessness whispers that nothing will ever change, Jesus reminds us that he is the God who brings life out of a dead tomb. And listen, I'm not giving you poetic crap. This is the center of Christianity. This is the center of why Jesus left heaven to come to earth for us. If you do not know what to pray, listen, keep it simple and honest. Jesus, I am not okay. I need you to sit with me in this. I need you to carry what I cannot. And that's enough. You don't need impressive words. You just need real ones. You need to be honest with him and understand this too. Sometimes the way Jesus carries you is through other people, through a counselor. We've said this several times now, through a chaplain, through medical staff, through someone you trust. All right. If your thoughts are escalating or you feel like you might act on them, telling someone immediately is not a lack of faith. It is faith actually in action, in my opinion. It is choosing life when death feels so loud. Listen, God was there for Elijah under the tree, and he didn't leave him there. He restored him, spoke to him, and reminded him that his story was not over, that there were assignments ahead. There was purpose he could not see yet. One moment he doesn't want to live, and the next moment it's like, whoa, 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 whoa. And if you're hearing this, listen, your story is not over either. You still have breath in your lungs, which means hope is still alive for you, even if you feel like, I don't know if that's true. I want to say this clearly. You're not disposable. You're not forgotten. You're not beyond redemption. This same Jesus who walked right out of that grave, walks into cells, into shame, into spirals, into nights that feel endless. He does not recoil at your struggle. Instead, he actually draws near to it, because that is where healing begins, and that is the God that we serve. When God speaks to Elijah, he finally gives him the next right thing to do. And I think when we're honest with God about wrestling with self-harm, he will give us the next right thing to do. Haven't said this the whole time. I've been waiting for this moment here. Maybe the next right thing for you to do. You've never accepted Jesus as your Lord and Savior, as the King of your heart. You've never accepted him where he forgives your sin and your shame and your guilt and your shortcomings, where you could bring him your ashes and he gives you beauty for it. You can bring him your mourning and he gives you joy for it. You can bring him whatever you are feeling and he makes the ultimate exchange, because that is what the cross and the empty tomb did. And you've watched this far. And if you haven't given your life to Christ, what are you waiting on? What are you waiting on? For some of you, you've given your life to Christ and you were like me, where you wrestle with self-harm. You wrestle with that fantasizing of just ending it all. And would it just be better if I was not here? Let me tell you emphatically, hell no, it's not better. And I'd like to use a lot other stronger words, but I'm trying to stop on the letters of people getting pissed off that I cussed. Because here's what I want you to hear, though. This is a serious friggin' deal, man, and you matter. You matter. Okay, you made some mistakes. Okay, you can't go back and fix them, but you can live now. You can't go back and change it, but you can live now. You can find the Jesus of the scriptures, not even the Jesus of the show or another show or any of that kind of stuff. The one who looked you in the eyes as he hung naked, stripped, beaten on the cross, and he was thinking about you. And that is how much you're worth it to him. For me, that's how much you're worth it to me. This is a heavy thing. I don't like talking about this stuff. I don't like telling my story. And God has done amazing things. Like, right, I've remarried. I love my wife. I love my kids, all that kind of stuff, right? Like, all that's wonderful for sure. Like, don't get me wrong, but I do get what it's like to constantly be wrestling with self-harm. I've given you 12 or 13 things today that I've learned, that I implement, that help me, and I really, really, really help you. Now, this is heavy. Okay, so we're going to do shout outs, but like I said earlier, I want to bring your spirits up. Okay, so and it's cloudy and nasty out today, so I didn't go to our beach here in St. Augustine, but I'm going to grab some stuff off YouTube, give us a little bit of uplifting music. Here's what I want to encourage you to do. If you deal with this, when we go through those things, maybe just sit with God in a moment. Even if you don't like the music, turn the music off. Just look at his beautiful creation. Look at everything that he's made. He is the maker of the heavens and the earth, and he is the maker of you. And here's the thing. If he made all of that beautiful, Jesus says in Matthew 6, how much more does he care about you? Go read it. Go read 1 Kings 19. Go read Matthew 6, where he talks about how beautiful the earth is. But yet, he cares more about you than it. That always, always speaks to me.